Hey everybody, welcome to PC Perspective, the mailbag episode, the 32nd episode of the mailbag. This is I'm recording it on the February 22nd. We have a extensive list of questions now to go through for you. We'll get through as many as we can in this typical 20-minute block. If you have questions you would like to leave for us, you can leave them on the YouTube video as a comment on the YouTube video here, or you can leave them as a comment on PCBer.com on the post where this YouTube video is listed. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. Daryl Austin asks, if you are buying a CPU today, is Ryzen a better choice than Coffee Lake with regards to meltdown and Spectre issues? If you purely are judging it by that metric, then I think the answer is probably yes, right? AMD has still held on to its statement that it is near zero vulnerability to variant 2 of Spectre. It is not able to be attacked through the meltdown stuff. That is an Intel specific issue. So if you're only looking at the security potential there, AMD is going to be a little bit safer. If you're looking at performance, before and after these security patches, maybe Ryzen is the better choice there, but honestly, we still don't have firm numbers, as a lot of the fixes and updates that Intel has talked about, even up to this week, with kind of final microcode going out for 6th, 7th, and 8th gen parts that maybe hopefully doesn't reboot people's PCs, is not out in the wild yet, right? So they've distributed to OEMs, but it's not actually, in a BIOS that we can all download and install on our systems, and then finally come to some conclusion about what performance changes take place with this platform. So if I were buying a CPU today, I honestly wouldn't have my decision really based on the Spectre meltdown concerns, right? I think the Microsoft software patches in place, the browser software patches in place, as well as the microcode updates that are either available or would be available soon, kind of seem to cover everything from the security side. The only question mark is the performance. And in that regard, I think that, again, as we've iterated many times, for the vast, vast, vast majority of consumer workloads, including PC gaming, there would be almost no impact in that performance. Areas where you might see performance is super low latency storage performance. But again, we're kind of waiting for the final implementations of these fixes before having a firm and final conclusion in that regard. Next question comes in from frequent contributor to the mailbag, Lambda Ghost, asks, could NVIDIA get an x86 license to compete with Intel and AMD? Legally, sure. They would have to negotiate with Intel and AMD in that regard, because there's a cross-licensing agreement between those two companies because they have shared development over a certain amount of time. That being said, I think the potential performance acceleration avenues that exist for x86 parts are either one, no longer there, right? Like we're kind of in a tweak and refine state for x86 parts, or are extremely, extremely expensive to develop from scratch at this point. So while NVIDIA might be able to do that, I think there's literally zero reason for them to want to do that. The areas that they are interested in, machine learning, AI, autonomous driving, GPU compute, all that stuff. If you need a general purpose processor for that, they have the ARM license. They've already proven that they can do that. And I would assume they would go down that route, right? And they have done that. If you look at their latest drive systems for autonomous cars, they include, multi-core ARM processors and then GPUs for massive parallel compute. So I think they could. It would probably be both expensive for the NVIDIA to suddenly want to butt in on this cross-licensing that has been settled after years and years of legal disputes between Intel and AMD, and also just don't think there's a reason for them to want to do it. Not This Guy Again asks, why don't AMD, NVIDIA, or their partners sell bare GPU boards without coolers for the water cooling market, similar to how high-end CPUs ship without coolers and require users to buy their own? Removing GPU coolers often voids the warranty, and then the removed cooler ends up going to waste anyway. It's an interesting idea. A couple of reasons would be that the infrastructure just doesn't exist for this to occur suddenly, right? So if you're EVGA and you want to sell a bare board, or your NVIDIA want to sell a bare board, you also have to make sure there are coolers available, ones that are air cooled for those who want to go that route, and some that are liquid cooled if you want to go that route. I think there's plenty of places where you could say you could buy water blocks, not a lot of places where you could sell aftermarket air coolers. We've seen a handful over the years, but it's not a very common thing. So the infrastructure doesn't exist really for that to be a thing. And if you're MSI and you decide to do this and you also have to release the coolers for it, then you are creating the infrastructure, which is actually an added cost over what you were doing anyway, because now you might not be wasting the cooler as you're referring to in the question, but you have to stock dozens or more at each of these stores that is selling it at Newegg or Amazon or Fry's or Micro Center to make sure everybody has the option available for them. I think this works in the CPU space because there's competitive there are competitive companies that want to vie for that purchase, for that accessory purchase, and it's just not there on the GPU side. Obviously, it's a chicken egg conundrum. You can't have an aftermarket cooler market develop without there being a need for them, but do what you can. I think the closest you get to this is EVGA and others selling cards with integrated water blocks on them. So and also selling GPUs with various quality and capability of air coolers on them. So EVGA has ACX, they have ICX, they have FTW, they have their reference kind of blower style, then they have water cooled options. So you kind of get that, but it's just not as robust as you're looking to see probably. Robin Hood asks, do you have any tips on data recovery from a failed external hard drive? I have 2 external drives that no longer work, won't show with Windows and clicks and resets, etc. But I don't know which data recovery companies are reputable, safe, and affordable. So there's 2 answers for this. One is a company that I know Alan has worked with before called Drive Savers. They are a little bit more reputable, but they also are the kind of company that doesn't list pricing on their website. Call and get a quote type of thing, or call and get some information. You're probably, Alan is maybe hearing that they've lowered prices because of competition, but you may still be looking at something near or above $1,000 for something like that per drive. There is another company that is called simply $300datarecovery.com, spelled out 300 DOLLAR, that we don't have any direct experience with, don't have any affiliation with, but apparently offers hard drive recovery regardless of the damage to the drive, even if it needs a level 3 clean room, apparently, where it starts at $300, it goes up to $400 if it's over a 2 terabyte capacity, it goes up to $500 if it's over 2 terabytes and it's encrypted, those types of things. So that will change the pricing, but I think knowing it up front is actually super beneficial. It all depends on what you have on these drives, how important those files are to you. Is it worth the time and effort to ship it? Probably. Is it worth $500 to get the data off of it? That's up to you. And then you have to go into the debate of, well, if they say you don't have to pay for the full charge if they only get 99% of your data back, but you do have to pay $100 if you don't want the data. I don't know. It's a little bit confusing. I would expect to pay $400 or $500 to get your data back off those drives, if they even can. There's still a chance that they're beyond that. Alan does recommend that if they are clicking, taking them out of their external enclosures isn't going to change anything. And if anything, continuing to power them on and try them may be doing more damage to them and causing more permanent file loss as well, data loss. So keep that in mind as you do that. Again, we don't know no exact recommendation for any of those 2 companies, but those are the 2 that come to mind that you might want to give a shot. DB7 asks, since Apple designs the silicon and operating system for iOS devices, why do they license and use the ARM architecture? It seems like owning the whole stack would allow them to do some truly unique things in silicon and support them in the OS. I mean, you're not wrong. Apple could, in theory, just entirely develop on its own an instruction set architecture and implement it. However, they've decided that using the base level ARM architecture, which is not the same as using an ARM architected processor. They're using the ARM ISA, instruction set architecture, basically using the years and years of work that ARM has developed to create an instruction set and a design for the flow of a processor that allows for low power consumption, efficient processing. That's what they're really licensing. Apple has a custom license, which allows them to basically, they can still architect the CPU however they want. Change caching, change clocking, change power domains. I'm sure they're doing all of that, adding specific processing blocks that are unique. They have the capability to do that, and I'm sure they're doing that. So in as much way as possible, without starting literally at ground zero, the Apple parts are a far departure from anything that exists elsewhere in the ARM ecosystem or mobile ecosystem or processor ecosystem. So I don't think anything is really holding them back from doing those unique and amazing things in silicon that they're already doing. And I think most people would agree that Apple is doing amazingly well in silicon in design in terms of power efficiency, performance, single-threaded performance inside their thermal envelopes are all quite impressive. D. Jotter asks, regarding your new disclosure statements on reviews, I was wondering about the advertiser statement, quote, purchased advertising at PC Perspective during the past 12 months. There are ads on the lower right of the website that rotate through random companies and services. Are these governed by that disclosure statement? Fundamentally, no. When we talk about purchased advertising on PC Perspective, we talk about buying them through us, like direct purchase ad sales. There's one ad spot, the bottom spot in the right-hand column, that is it's a remnant location run by a third-party ad agency that basically puts in whatever they think is relevant at the time. So if you see Amazon ads there, if you see toothpaste ads there, if you see winter boots ads there, that's all probably based on whatever other stuff you've searched on, and that's on you. But no, that is not really covered by the disclosure there, because we have no control over what's going there, other than if we see something that we're not comfortable with, if there's some adult ad or something coming up there that we don't want associated with our audience, we can request that specific advertiser be removed. But that, we have no control over what really shows there, and makes it easier on our side to boot. King Kookalook wants to know, he says he's been looking for a good cloning software package that he can use, or that I can use, to back up and restore systems that I build for my coworkers and their children. I used to use Norton Ghost, but haven't in a while. Anything new and good out there now? It has to be something that is idiot proof, because the world keeps making better ones. There's two of them that stand out. There's actually a few of them that stand out. One is Paragon. Paragon software they have several different families of this, products for home users, hard disk manager for Windows, partition manager for Windows. Chances are you probably want hard disk manager for Windows. It allows you to manage disks and systems, do clones, do backups, organize things that way. And a very similar piece of software is Acronis True Image. They have a home iteration of that. Both of these software packages are probably in the $40 to $80 range, depending on the different features you get. But if you're simply, creating images to store and either reuse or keep for backup of other people's systems, I think either of those would work pretty well for your purposes. And I would consider both of them as close to idiot proof as you can get. I think Alan more frequently uses Paragon. I, in the past, have used Acronis. It's just a user interface issue at that point. They're all kind of doing the same thing, and I think you'll find that those are appropriate for your system builds and organizing that data. XMass, frequenter of the podcast chat room, wants to know, I'm a regular listener every Wednesday for the PC Perspective podcast. And I was wondering if you ran any websites before PCPer. I've heard that you started an AMD-based blog, but was that your first introduction? Yes, actually, for people who haven't been around since the year 2002 or so, before PC Perspective existed, which started in 2004, the website I ran was amdmb.com, which stood for amdmotherboard.com, which was previously athlonmb.com, which was previously k7m.com. mb.com. So the the beginning stages of the website you see today started as k7m.com, which is actually just a forum for a specific Asus K7M motherboard, the first Athlon motherboard that came into existence. I worked at a mom and pop computer store, and finding support for this product was very difficult. It was shipped in white boxes. Asus didn't really have a lot of support. The whole idea of online support there wasn't very common, and there were no places that offered just discussion groups for it. So I created a forum for this particular motherboard. It became very popular. We would get sent BIOSes by Asus engineers directly. We would post them on our forum. People would download them, try them, experiment, overclock, do all those types of things. At some point after doing that, I was contacted by a rep from Epox motherboard company that said, hey, we want you to do the same type of thing for our board. Do a review, keep track of it, have a discussion group. Can we do that? So they sent me their board, and I suddenly realized that, hey, I could do this. This is like a review thing now. This is something interesting. So that's when it changed over to athlonmb.com. And then there was a point, I would say probably in 2002-ish, maybe 2003, when there was rumors that AMD was getting rid of the Athlon brand. They were no longer going to use it, so we moved over to amdmb.com. And then in 2004, when I graduated college, decided to branch out, make it a long-term goal, and made it to the website you see today. So yes, started as a strictly AMD-based fan site. Took a long time, as you can imagine, to convince NVIDIA that they should send me products, Intel that they should send me products. Yeah, it's been an interesting ride. That was the first website, k7m.com, started in 1999, for those of you keeping track at home. All right, we've got some questions that came in from Twitter as well. At MobileDom wants to know, are you heading out to Mobile World Congress? No, I am not actually going to MWC this year. As far as I knew going up to it, there wasn't going to be a whole lot of announcements. I know Samsung's announcement is coming out before MWC, but I will be missing the hands-on time by going there. And I'm sure there will be some other announcements and cool demos and stuff that I'll be missing. But no, not going out to Mobile World Congress this year. Have a lot of travel beforehand, a lot of travel after it. So that's getting cut from the list this year. Second question from Mobile Dom was, do you expect Pinnacle Ridge IPC improvements to be in the double digits? Pinnacle Ridge is the name for the Zen Plus architecture that's coming out this year, April-May timeframe from AMD. It'll be the Ryzen 7, 5, and 3 2000 series parts that have already started to make their way out in name, at least, as the Ryzen APU. No, I don't think you'll see IPC improvements in the double digits. I think you may see double-digit performance improvements in general that are a result of better clock speeds from the process technology improvements, as well as improvements to the, what do they call it? Precision Boost 2, what they're calling it now, which is basically more intelligent clock speed shifts as your workload changes thread levels, right? So in other words, better utilization of the power and thermal threshold of the part if you're using half of the available threads on the part as opposed to all or one, which was kind of where Precision Boost was useful at previously. So definitely not in IPC, but maybe double digits in total performance if you include clock speed changes and that type of stuff. Arul Mimus asks, will machine learning chips someday, 5 years out or so, become a consumer product like video cards as the AI becomes more ubiquitous and open, or will that capacity stay in the cloud and are GPUs the last important add-in card home PCs will ever see? Interesting. Remember a company called Aegea? Yeah, made physics acceleration cards. That didn't last very long, but NVIDIA did buy that company and integrated the technology into the GPU, which is now kind of not really utilized for anything. Will we see dedicated machine learning add-in cards for PCs for the consumer product lines? I don't know. I think you'll see dedicated hardware. We're already seeing dedicated hardware for machine learning and AI. If you look at Google Tensor Cores and their TPU and some of the modifications that NVIDIA has shown on its GPU side, those could be expanded on. But I think the majority of that need for very specific and high performance machine learning compute, I guess, is going to be on the training side. And a lot of that is going to be done in big servers and data centers, or, you know, even giant, you know, kind of corporate data centers as well. I don't think there's going to be a need for that for the inference, which is generally what we consider what the consumer will be utilizing AI and machine learning for. Basically, you know, can your phone or your PC recognize what the background is behind you based on all the data that that algorithm has been fed through, you know, days and months and weeks of training on the server side that built that software model. Now, I could be wrong. There could be more need for that, but I do think what you'll probably see instead is graphics processors or standard system processors, you know, main CPUs or DSPs kind of merging into this functionality. It already kind of exists, that if you look at what Apple claims versus what Huawei has claimed versus what Qualcomm is kind of claiming, is they already have dedicated AI chips or AI subsections of their chip. I think that's kind of a misnomer. It's, you know, these are mostly just where does the workload most accurately and efficiently fit, right? Especially on the Qualcomm side. I don't think you'll see for a PC or even for a laptop, you'll see discrete, separated out machine learning products. So maybe GPUs are the last important add-in card for home PCs. I don't know. Maybe it's storage. Maybe it's networking. Maybe you probably will need an add-in card if you're going to plug into the back of your head, like in the Matrix, though. That's got to come from somewhere. Let's see. Last question for this week from Space Jam Flam. When do you think display manufacturers are going to stop developing up and work on refining what we have? I want my 1440p 165 hertz G-Sync panel to be $300 in a few years, not the option to spend $1,500 on a 24 hertz 16K monitor. It's an interesting question. You're looking for price reduction in current technology versus continued innovation in technology at higher prices. And I think both occur at the same time, right? So as GPUs get faster, in theory, it brings down the prices of the previous peak performance parts. Some will argue that in the GPU field in particular might be a bad example, because we have seen prices increase for certain classes of GPUs over the last several, like NVIDIA generations, for example. But I still think that's the cadence that will occur. Display manufacturers are all technology manufacturers, and most for-profit companies are worried about margins. Margins come in two spans. You either have high margin, low volume parts, or you have low margin, high volume parts. And everybody will address all of those things at some point. It's just a matter of what it will be. I agree with you. I would like to have a 1440p, 165 hertz G-Sync panel for $300. We don't have those today. I think competition and continued innovation from AMD on the FreeSync side will help drive down G-Sync prices, maybe drive down the need to have G-Sync as a thing, and more likely adopt industry standards in the display port or HDMI fields, but not today. Not today. We'll see. E3's coming up. We're supposed to be getting those HDR monitors from NVIDIA G-Sync support by the end of March, right? Coming up sooner than I thought. They're not going to be $300, though. I don't know what to tell you. If you guys have questions for me or for us for next week, again, leave them in the YouTube comments of this video or the PCPro.com post that links this video, and we'll cycle through them and pick out some and put them in the episode for next week. Thank you, everybody, for joining us, or joining me, and we'll see you next time.